Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up on the chart here, we've got winter storm warnings out for this stretch of the Alaska Range for snow and gusty winds to 50 miles an hour out of the south. So that's going to be creating visibilities down to near zero at times, especially through the passes here. Isabel Pass, and then up to the north, a lot of advisories out, winter weather advisories. One down here for the Hyder-Stewart area there for tonight for additional snow, and a winter storm warning out for the northern panhandle. Actually, the Haines and Klondike highways up toward the border, looking at 12 to 18 inches total to have fallen by Saturday morning, so that's out just for tonight. And farther to the north here, winter weather advisories all through the interior, Fairbanks, Tanana Valley areas, 48 inches of snow coming through tonight, and snow, gusty winds, reducing visibilities at times all the way up through the Brooks Range here and southward into the 40-mile country, and this extends back to the west. Probably less snow falling back through here, but those strong northeast winds will reduce the visibilities considerably. And also winter weather advisory continues for St. Lawrence Island and the Bering Strait coast for the next couple of days, actually, with gusty north winds to 50 miles an hour continuing, and snow and blowing snow reducing the visibilities. On the chart today, or the sea ice analysis here, kind of a close-up, open water right in there, and then you can kind of see the broken appearance of the ice just to the north there. That's that way because of the north winds are dragging it southward. But we've got open water from north of the strait all the way down towards St. Lawrence Island, and especially to the south and west there. And so winds are continuing to probably result with the very cold temperatures in freezing spray, especially all areas there on the north side of the island. And those winds will continue, but probably on Sunday be something less than they will be definitely from today and tomorrow. Otherwise, looking at satellite imagery from yesterday, pretty good break here along the North Gulf Coast, southeast, Kodiak, and up to the north. You can see a upper trough sliding southward, accompanied with a big push of Arctic air coming down into the northern Bering Sea, spreading down to the Pribilofs, and then this system down here pushing up toward the northeast. As I mentioned, a break occurred here over the Gulf of Alaska and along the Panhandle, and then some variable clouds here over portions of the interior areas. And we'll see today the cold air here over the northern Bering Sea yesterday is pushed southward all the way to and beyond the Aleutians, with rolling that into motion. Clouds and snow banked up on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, as well as eastern Aleutians, north winds gusting as high as 50 miles an hour in these locations, more of a 30 to 40 mile an hour north wind there over the Pribilofs, and then back up with gusts as high as 50 miles an hour from St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait. Pretty windy conditions across the northwest interior as well, even over the interior areas. Indian Mountain seeing gusts to 40 miles an hour or so, with some snow even back through here, which extended up to the eastern Brooks Range area. And then you can see that front having pushed inland and to the northeast with another impulse or front forming again and pushing up to the northeast there across the Queen Charlotte's right up along the North Gulf Coast. That brought all the wind and rain into the Panhandle today, and then snow now spreading westward as it's gotten into the Cook Inlet area today from Anchorage, Palmer, all the way down to Seldovia and westward to Iliamna and actually up along the Alaska Range. A fair amount of snow spreading across the Copper River Basin into the eastern Tanana Valley areas and eventually coming northward and a little bit to the west there throughout the night tonight. On the chart today, here's roughly the position of that front has passed north of Skagway. Since the temperatures have fallen there, blizzard conditions were reported at White Pass this afternoon, and rain and gusty winds gusting up to 50 miles an hour actually at Juneau out of the east-southeast, and pretty windy conditions all the way down the coastline there, especially in advance of the front, and still windy behind it. Otherwise, we had rain, Cordova, Yakutat, down the southern side of the Kenai Peninsula, roughly to Kodiak, and that's since ended and pushed off to the west. Definitely snow back to the west, again, Kamishak Bay, right up into the valleys, snow on the increase here. Pretty light to start with in some areas, especially on the downsloping from the Talkeetna Mountains. And then areas of snow and breezy conditions, 15 to 25 mile per hour wind, some higher gusts, as I mentioned, like around Indian Mountain or the higher elevations, definitely seeing the wind with areas of light snow through here and moderate snow falling on the western Arctic coast up there. Otherwise, flurries, patchy fog off to the east. Snow, blowing snow, winds gusting 35 to 50 miles an hour here through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. That extends down to the Pribilofs, but the winds ease off a little bit there. But as I mentioned, gusts to 50 miles an hour or more occurring across the eastern Aleutian areas, windy with snow, especially on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. And northeast winds gusting to 40 miles an hour with snow, becoming snow showers there out towards Shimei and Attu, and then some scattered snow showers over the central Aleutians. Looking at tonight, this low center tracks northward right up into western Prince William Sound, center somewhere around Whittier by 3 o'clock tomorrow morning. So again, the snow and the advisories here across south central Alaska. Snow now spreading north to the southern slopes of the eastern Brooks Range and back to the west to about this extent, maybe as far as the Kobuk Valley, but definitely in the Koyukuk Valley. And then with this gradient, snow and blowing snow, reducing visibilities to a half mile or less at times in all of these areas here. Less wind, but still a lot of snow for the area south of the Alaska Range. And then the North Gulf Coast stays wet and warm enough for it to occur mostly in the form of rain. Looking for some fairly heavy snow for Valdez tonight into tomorrow, and continued southwest winds here, or southwesterly flow keeps it wet in over the southeast coast, and those snowfall levels may or may not rise above freezing there, say at Skagway again, but the warning out for tonight for that area. And then for tomorrow, this low lifts into the eastern Alaska Range area, or almost makes it into the Tok and Northway area. So as that pulls northward, northwest winds behind that coming across the Alaska Range is going to dry it out. So the snowfall will be ending from southwest to northeast as this colder air sweeps in first across Kamishak Bay, southern Cook Inlet. So that tends to hang the snowfall on longer, so may not end until tomorrow afternoon here from Anchorage and especially Palmer in the Matanuska Valley, and even beyond that for the Susitna Valley. Snow tomorrow again through much of the eastern interior, and also regenerating back here to the west with that developing trough out in this area, but starting to clear out over northern Bristol Bay and back up along the west coast as well with pretty gusty winds, in some cases gusting over 50 miles an hour up here for the northwest Alaska area and through the Brooks Range with a lot of blowing snow. No change for the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island area tomorrow, and general area of snow with a very cold air out over the open water. again right down to the Pribilofs, and then that all becomes more showery here with diminishing winds now. You can see the gradient really lighting up over the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, and winds start to diminish also out over the Aleutians as the cold air kind of settles into place. And then the outlook for Sunday, not a lot of change except for continued diminishing winds here along the Aleutians, now just scattered snow showers with some clearing periods, light winds and some lingering snow showers there for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Pretty much dry for Bristol Bay, and then variable clouds, areas of flurries through the interior regions. A trough brings a better chance of snow there to the eastern Arctic coast, and that should hold those 20-knot westerlies in for the east side there in the marine areas. Otherwise, down in the Gulf of Alaska, another strong system pulling northeastward out of the Pacific here, and that's going to, throughout the day, bring gale force winds back to the Panhandle and eventually into the North Gulf Coast, and the rainfall increasing again here across the Panhandle. Mixture farther to the north, snow will increase across Prince William Sound, up the west side of the Copper River Basin, and that'll spread westward once again. So Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet, increasing chance of snow throughout the day, Sunday afternoon, and then by Monday this system may track right back up into Prince William Sound once again, the way it looks at this point in time with this particular forecast model. Temperatures today, starting with the warmer locations over the southeast coast, there's a 45 Metlakatla and Sitka. Otherwise, Craig had 42 and Heidelberg 43. 37 degrees in Petersburg. Juneau had 39. 40 degrees over at Yakutat, where they picked up nearly 2 inches of rain in the last 24 hours. Upper 30s there, Cordova over to Whittier. 28 at Valdez. And then right around zero throughout the Copper River Basin areas, with widespread area of snow moving across that area, lifting northward, Northway at -9, Fairbanks up to 3 today, Willow at 14 above this afternoon, coming up from a low this morning of about 22 degrees below zero. Quite a cold morning there in the Susitna Valley. 20s here for the Kenai Peninsula, upper 30s Kodiak Island. Farther north, 24 below, Anatuvik with a -36. Umiat Airfield, the Fort Yukon at 0. Battles -4. Colder back to the west here, 27 below at Ambler, -10 at McGrath. Along the Arctic coast, Atasuk had 29 below and -26 at Deadhorse. Back to the west, 11 below Kivalina and Kotzebue, and around 5 below here for the coastal areas of the Seward Peninsula, Savunga up to 7, and below zero here, 0 to 10 below across the Yukon-Kuskokwim Valley. A little chillier for the Kuskokwim Valley, or I meant the deltas here, a little chillier for the valley, 10 to 15 below. And out to the southwest, staying in the teens today over the Pribilofs with 19 at St. Paul, 29 Nikolsky, 30 degrees at Adak, and earlier Shemio was 34. They're now down colder than that, and 20s here for the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula, coming down to 15 at Pilot Point and 6 degrees at King Salmon. Lows tonight below zero right out to the coastline there, but not quite to St. Lawrence Island, well below zero western interior eastward there along the Brooks Range, of course the eastern north slope. Milder here with the clouds and snow increasing, still 5 to 10 below central Tanana Valley over toward Northway. Should stay above zero for the Copper River Basin, south central Alaska, so a much milder night coming up for the Susitna Valley as well as Kenai Peninsula. Upper 30s over the eastern North Gulf Coast and 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle. Highs for tomorrow back into the 40 to 50 degree range here, or 40 to 45 degree range for the southeast coast. 30s into the Copper River Basin and mid-30s here for the North Gulf Coast, and chillier conditions, of course, up there north of the Alaska Range. A little below zero for the highs and below zero conditions. Again, 15 below or so for the Kuskokwim Valley. King Salmon looking for a high of -7 tomorrow. 20s for the Alaska Peninsula and near or at freezing for the Aleutians. And for flying weather tomorrow, lots of IFR with the snow coming in and the blowing snow right up to the southern slopes of the Brooks Range over the eastern interior here. Socked in across Cook Inlet, but beginning to improve Off to the southwest, North Gulf Coast IFR, marginal or IFR conditions for the Panhandle, and another swath out here from the Bering Strait into the northern Bering. Tomorrow afternoon, you can see VFR conditions breaking out here, first in the southern Cook Inlet area, moving northward, and IFR now from the Susitna Valley all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast and back to the west there, and then more IFR along the North Gulf Coast there and the north coast of the Panhandle. IFR, say, up toward White Pass. Marginal conditions out over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Anaktuvik, marginal becoming VFR. Adigan, same forecast. Lake Clark, VFR. Merrill, IFR becoming marginal. Rainy, IFR becoming marginal. Windy, IFR. Mentasta, Isabel, Tanita, Portage, all IFR. Chilkoot and White, same forecast. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet along the North Gulf Coast tomorrow. 2,000 to 4,000 feet there over the Panhandle, down to the surface out west and of course to the north. Icing above about 2,500 feet in the shaded area here from the northeast out toward eastern Norton Sound and along the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. Jet stream, cold upper low here over Norton Sound, northerly 70 knots, southwest flow, good for a good snow pattern here, south central Alaska on up into the interior, southwest 60 knots for the Panhandle. 9,000 feet, 55 to 45 knot winds, eastern Brooks Range into the Bering Strait, becoming much lighter here over the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Good southwest flow continues through the Panhandle, also at 3,000 feet at 20 to 30 knots. Westerlies 35 across the Barren Islands, and then these strong winds up here over the northeast interior into the St. Lawrence Island area. Turbulence-wise, moderate chop, northern Panhandle, and the southern Kenai Peninsula to Fognak Island, as well as from the northwest coast to St. Lawrence Island. And after hangar flying, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Walter Combs is back. Walter's been on the program before. He was on last time. He's kind of the chief advocate for the Weather Cams program, which for all of us pilots and aviation people here in Alaska is a tremendous, tremendous tool. And he's back to talk about some of the changes, some of the things come on the horizon. Walter, welcome.
Thank you.
We ended the last program talking about misty fjords. Have you got the cameras in there?
The cameras are in. They're installed. We installed those in September, October rather. September 30th, I believe, was the second one we installed. And they're both operating and providing service.
Great. Certainly need them. So let's talk a little bit about what's the future about. Can you talk about the aviation data portal and route selection?
You bet. We've got a new website that we're building right now, and what it provides is it provides all the weather data and the flight decision data that a pilot can need to make good flight decisions, to include our cameras. So the cameras are kind of the central feature of the website, just like it is now, but we're adding more data products to make it more useful for flight decision making.
So a week or so ago, I heard your presentation to the Industry Council, and I was introduced to a woman that's come on assignment to work with you for a couple of months, and she's a human factors specialist. Talk a little bit about what you expect her to do.
Well, with the new website, we want to make sure that we have the aviation human factors, so human factors that are associated with aviators and aviation industry. We want to make sure that that all of those standards, human factor standards, are incorporated into the website and the mobile apps that we're building. So we've brought her in, and CAMI, the Civil Aviation Medical Institute, allowed her to do a 6-month detail with us, to come over and to lend her expertise to our development.
Well, I'll tell you, I've got a lot of time for CAMI and their director, Dr. Mel Antunano. He, as you know, is here in Alaska almost a year ago, did our fall seminar last year. CAMI does a lot of really good work, and I'm sure glad to see him support you. So describe a little bit more. You're in beta test right now?
We're in beta test right now. It's a closed beta, so we've got 35 pilots that are pretty much handpicked that are providing review and feedback to the website. The mobile apps, we've already have the phase 1 development or beta testing complete, and now we're making modifications to it for a phase 2 beta test that should begin in sometime in early February.
And what's your expected delivery date for the full-up system? Or is it going to change all the time?
Well, I'm pushing to try to get us launched May 1st.
Oh, good.
And we think we can do it, but boy, developing websites and mobile apps is it's more of an art than a science, and it's not
Black magic. Huh?
It's hard to pick a delivery date, so I'm always aggressive. So I've picked May 1, and the team's working toward that. We'll try to get that.
And how long is what's your human factors specialist? What's her name?
Her name is Daniela Krachinova.
Daniela, yeah, nice lady. How long is she going to be with you?
She'll be with me until the end of May. So
okay. So it all comes together, doesn't it?
It all comes together, or it should.
Well, anything you'd like to add, Walter? We've got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I really appreciate the pilots in Alaska who are always so helpful to the program with their suggestions and recommendations and their patience with us as we develop and harden the camera service. So I'd like to just give my thanks to the aviation industry in Alaska.
Well, that's very kind of you, but I bet you if you asked any pilot out there, you would be the one there. Thank you. So what's it look like for the lower 48? Any chance of it expanding down there?
Well, I would like to host cameras that exist down there at airports now, and I will go back to our Joint Resources Council to request authorization to begin that process. And I don't know how that'll work. There's a lot of things we need to work through, but in February I'm traveling to DC to make that request, or to brief our JRC and to discuss with them and try to attain a decision to move forward.
Are there any other cameras down there, like in mountain passes, or are they all at airports, or what do you have to deal with?
There are cameras in mountain passes, mostly on the road system with the DOTs, but many of the mountain passes that we would like to, that we know cameras are needed in have DOT cameras already existing.
So you just got to tie them in.
Sure, we just tie them in, and we don't have, the agency doesn't have to put out the cost and expense of installation and maintenance. And I think that's kind of the genius behind behind this third-party hosting plan. So is that we don't, the agency and the general public doesn't have to pay for the hardware and for the maintenance of that system. We just incorporate it and build it into our network and make it part of the service that we provide.
Wow. It's all good. It is a great program, and thanks very much for your work on it.
You bet. Thank you, Harry.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Please go to our website, www.aasfonline.org, or like our Facebook page. Until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. Gales tomorrow for northern Lynn Canal. Southwest gales on the north coast, southeast coming down to 30 knots in the south. And this Clarence Strait tomorrow, southeast 30 knots, not 40. That's Sunday's forecast, south 30 knots there for Stevens Passage. And then full gales here all along the coast, increasing throughout the day to 45 knots, all from the southeast. Now southeast 40 for Clarence Strait, 30 knots Stevens Passage, and south 30 for northern Lynn Canal. Prince William Sound tomorrow, south or southeast at 30 knots, southwest 30 knots, northern Cook Inlet, gales south of the Forelands to Kamishak Bay, in across the Barrens to the western North Gulf Coast, west 30 knots there on the east side of Kodiak. Those pick up to 40 knots with that next storm coming up from the southwest there. Out of the northeast, 40 knots drop back to 35 for the Barren Islands. Southeast increasing to 40 knots throughout the day for the central North Gulf Coast, east 20 Prince William Sound. Bristol Bay, light winds tomorrow out of the northwest, northwest 20 for the Alaska Peninsula. From Castle Cape to Sitkinak, a little stronger at 30 knots. Forecast for Sunday, more northerly, picking up to 40 knots in that zone. Winds coming up a little bit there for Bristol Bay, and small craft advisories out now for the Alaska Peninsula. Eastern Aleutians north 15 to 20 knots, otherwise northeast 20 to 25 here into the central Aleutians, and then 25 knots all the way out to Shimia. And for Sunday, about the same on the wind directions, but lighter, 20 knots here for the western Aleutians, coming down to 15 for the central areas, and a northerly 15 to 20 again for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast, north to northwest, 25 to 30 knots, small craft advisories there, as well as the northern Bering Sea. Gales out of the north for St. Lawrence Island, which on Sunday will come down under gale force there, but the heavy freezing spray will continue. 20 to 25 knots out of the north for the southwest coast and the Pribilofs, as well as the northern Bering Sea. Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, east-northeast at 20, then northeast 20 from the central coast, pick up south of Cape Beaufort here at 25, gales from Cape Thompson down to Wales. And then those fall back a little bit, still pretty brisk though for that zone, but really coming down now for the Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort area, just 5 knots in the forecast for the western coast, 10 knots central coast, and then northeast 10 to 20 knots for the east side. And then for tonight again, northeast winds up there, pick up speed, still pretty brisk with the winter weather advisories all through the interior, winter storm warning eastern Alaska range, as well as the northern southeast coast toward the border there at the end of the Klondike Highway. And snow continues, Alaska Peninsula, winds diminishing. And then for tomorrow, still that winter weather advisory, snow and blowing snow, St. Lawrence Island to the Bering Strait. Snow ending from southwest to northeast here across south central Alaska. A lot of snow in the forecast all the way up to the Brooks Range from the Copper River Basin across the Tanana Valley. Wet for the Panhandle. Next big storm rolling in Sunday sometime, so increasing gales and rain for the Panhandle. Snow spreads northward once again and back to the west. Well, let's look at Alaska weather for tonight. Have a great weekend.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
If you're interested in serving on your local Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Council, the deadline to apply is Friday, February 3rd. Call 1-800-478-1456 for more information.